Hello and welcome to Ant RC. It's Terry here, and today I haven't bought this, but I'm unboxing this for a good friend of mine, Lee. He wondered if I wanted to unbox this on the channel. It's something that he'd recently acquired. It is the FTX Outback Ranger 2. Now I'm not going to go through all the details on the box because you can look at those online, because that will just waste a bit of video time really. What this video is aimed at is someone that is about to start getting into crawling, or want to get their child a truck or whatever. I'm going to go through some tips and tricks and some important things to consider, but also what I think about this truck, because I had the first generation of this truck, and this is what started me off into crawling. And Andrew saw it running, and the idea kind of sparked, and we didn't look back. So a very quick look. It's a 1/10 scale. Says suitable for ages 14 plus. But I mean, in my opinion, if you've got an adult there, kids much younger than that can use it. £169.99 retail in the UK here. It's 99% ready to run, it says. Now, what that means is it's got everything but AA batteries for the transmitter. And it is waterproof. I can confirm that because I drowned mine completely and it was still running. So let's get it out of the box. It's brand new, hasn't been run yet, and we'll go through some more details. So quick jump cut. So as if by magic, here she's unboxed. And a good looking rig she is, I have to say. My one was exactly the same, but it was blue actually, but the rest of it was the same. I'm not sure, forgive me, what they've done to upgrade it from the first generation. This is not what this video is about. It's mainly about looking at it and saying why, or explaining why this would be a good starter crawler and the things you can do to it to make it a bit better for relatively cheap, to be honest with you. So as it's ready to run, comes with its own radio. The radio is absolutely fine. What this truck does have is an integrated electronic speed controller and radio system, and that's something I would talk about upgrading and the reasons why. But it's fine, honestly, to run it in stock form. It works perfectly fine. If you want to do some crawling with it, then I would suggest, get into it a little bit more seriously. Then I would suggest upgrading. So it's got Alexa and shell with stickers on it. It says Ranger 2, it's like a Land Rover shell. But you can get these clear. So if you did want to get this and kind of do things with it, you could paint it yourself. You could leave the windows open. You could put an interior in it, a plastic interior. You can get some cheap Chinese interiors, such as this one I've got here. And you could make it that little bit more scale. I mean, let's be honest, this isn't really about, if you want to make really detailed scale video and, make it a little bit more serious, then, you need to start talking about this type of thing here. But that's, again, not what this truck is intended for. So it looks great. Plastic wheels, decent tyres, and the version I had, the Generation 1 of this, climbed really well. I was so impressed with it. It was absolutely brilliant. And again, it got me hooked into these, and it got me hooked into my MC6 and the Mammoth. So be warned, folks, if you're going to start off with one of these, the likelihood of the money pit that is RC is probably quite likely to happen. Before we get the body off, you do get a charger in here as well. You get an NIMH battery in it too. So you've got a manual here that tells you all about it. And yeah, let's get the body off. The battery is in there at the moment. Let's adjust the camera. So yeah, here we have the battery. So you've got your own wall charger in there. It's like a little mini Tamiya connector. And here's the chassis. So let's have a bit of a closer look. So here we have the motor. And then at the front we have this all-in-one radio receiver stroke electronic speed controller. So that means that everything is integrated into the rig. So you can't mess around with extra channels and things like that. It's a fairly basic electronic speed controller. You can't change any settings. as far as I'm aware. What you can do though is the little jumper in here, you can change it to either NIMH or LiPo. Please make sure you do that to make sure that, you know, because LiPos are quite dangerous. If you don't know anything about them, look up about LiPos, because you know you can get into quite serious trouble with them. So you need to make sure that your ESC is set for the right battery. My personal feeling about this truck is it's absolutely fine and it's great. The first upgrade I would do, or the first two upgrades I would do, is your own ESC speed controller and radio gear, because if bearing in mind, because they're integrated, if you want to upgrade the ESC, you're going to have to get a new radio. So what that will mean is you'll need to get a new transmitter and you'll need to get a new receiver. Now, from any good hobby store, you can get some really decent, cheap radio gear that's great, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Nor does the ESC. The ESC that I would recommend for this type of truck, there's two that you could install in here that would be perfectly fine. The first being the Hobbywing 1060, and the other one being the Hobbywing 1080. Now the 1060 from memory is about £18, and that's exactly what I put in here in my one. And that means you have a drag brake, because at the moment this rig, I haven't run it, but I'm fairly certain with these integrated ESC and radio gear, like my Outback, it doesn't have a drag brake. So that means that when you go down a hill or any kind of slope, the truck will just start running away with itself. There's no drag brake to actually stop it from just keep going. And that is, you need a drag brake if you want to do crawling and you want to kind of go over obstacles, because if you imagine if you go over an obstacle and you go down on a slight hill and the truck then just takes off, it's not very controlled and it's not very slow. So yeah, upgrade, I think, as a part of an essential really after a little while, is upgrading the ESC. But again, you can do it cheap, and you can put cheap radio gear in it as well. But I think it's a must. I use Hobbywing. I use a Hobbywing 1080, and that's the next step up from the 1060. But they are about £40 depending on where you get them from. You can get them cheaper if you go on Banggood or Hobby King. But I use a Hobbywing 1080 in my Mammoth, Cross RC Mammoth, and my TRX4 and SCX10. So they're absolutely brilliant, but not necessary, I don't think, for this. A Hobbywing 1060 would be absolutely fine. The next thing I would look to upgrade is the servo. Now, the steering servo is okay. It was absolutely fine in my first one. I didn't kill it. It's a 3 kilogram steering servo, and it works okay. Where you will tend to come up with issues with a lower torque steering servo is if you're kind of jammed up with, or you're going over something and you kind of, the steering's against a hill, and you want to turn the steering but you don't want to drive forward. Obviously when you're not driving and you try and steer, it's putting a lot of stress on the steering servo. It's not something you should really do. You should try and creep forward and then move the steering. This type of steering servo will struggle. You can get some quite high-powered Power HD steering servos for about £18, all metal gear from eBay. So yes, a Power HD, I think it's a 20 kilo waterproof steering servo, about £18, I think. Will take a little while to come, but it's overkill for this rig. But I tend to have my steering servos, you know, as set as overkill. I have a more powerful servo than I need, because then it's less likely to break and you can do more with it. You don't have to worry about overstressing it so much. One thing I will suggest that's important if you're going to change the steering servo out, and it's something that I made a mistake, a complete rookie error, but easily done. You install a steering servo with your new radio gear. Make sure all of the travel, everything's centered, all the sub trims is centered, and the steering servo is centered before you center the wheel, like align the wheels and attach the steering servo arm. Because if the steering servo isn't centered and you've got your trims set, you know, out, it can overstress the steering servo. When you turn like full lock, you could be, if it's not center at the start, you could be trying to turn it more than it wants to. And yes, I'm guilty of that, and I've burnt out a few servos before I learnt my lesson. So back then onto the rig, and not so much about the upgrades. because I wanted to go through the upgrades first, just in case that was your, you know, most important thing that you wanted to think about, because let's be honest, most RC rigs get upgraded, right? So you know, I think after a little while you will probably, especially the ESC and the radio gear, if you leave the steering servo alone, that in my opinion is really quite a good thing and an important thing to do. It will make your experience with this truck much better. So it comes with these lights. Now, funnily enough, these lights are really, really bright. The front and back, so it's got white LEDs at the front, red LEDs at the back, and they're that good that Andrew and I tend to buy these, because you can buy these as spares. I've got them in all of my rigs. I've got them in my TRX4, I've got them in my SCX10, I've got them in the Mammoth, and I've even got them in the MC6, because they're really bright, they're really reliable, you can drown them, they're fantastic, absolutely brilliant. This rig has got, you know, everything is at a budget. It's not an expensive rig. It's got oil-filled shocks, but they give good articulation. You have the links underneath. You've got metal links underneath, and it will pick up some really nice articulation. I can't really do it here on the bench one-handed, but yeah, take my word for it, it really does look the part. When you're crawling and going over obstacles, it looks really, really good. Let's get the camera straight again. Come on. There we go. Sorry about that. Iffy filming. So there's not much more to say about it, really. You know, it is a budget rig, but it's a perfectly good, acceptable rig. I mean, there's one thing that you could do possibly is to put some metal beadlock wheels on it. These are glued, I believe. Yeah, you can see the glue marks in there. So the plastic wheels and the tyres are glued on. You can get them off by kind of baking them, heating them up, but I've always found that to be more trouble than it's worth. So you can go on eBay, get some metal beadlock wheels and some deep, you know, some copy swampers, super swampers, really, really cheap. And this would be an absolute riot. I did think about at some stage about buying one just for nostalgia, and then seeing how much I could upgrade it, change the shocks, the wheels, tyres, the radio gear, motor, and see how good capable I could make it. The body choices, I believe, are a bit limited. I think it's a 250mm wheelbase, so there won't be, could be wrong about this, but there won't be a lot of bodies out there. But you could, again, get a Lexan body shell that's clear. They come clear, unpainted. You could paint it yourself. You could put it on. You could put a little interior on. So this has an absolute stack load of upgradable choices for you without it costing, you know, lots and lots of money. There is obviously the issue that you could spend more money than a more expensive rig, but you're likely to upgrade your expensive rig anyway and spend just as much money. It's all a step and it's all an addiction. But really the basic message is that this rig is, as it is, it's perfectly fine. You could get away with it and run it and you'd have lots of fun. It'd be really good for getting someone into the hobby and you know, keeping it and getting kids out there, and you know, we need as many people interested as possible. So check one out. I rate it absolutely brilliant. I really kind of regret selling my one now. If I had it still, I would be upgrading it and messing with it, and I'd still run it and film it, you know, just for fun. And I'd really, really be interested to see what they'd be like if you spent some money at them. I'm really quite impressed with it, and as I say, I absolutely hammered mine, got it wet, did all sorts with it, and it survived fine. The gearbox was okay, the motor was okay. So really, buy one. They're really good. I can rate them highly, and they give you lots of upgradable opportunity, and you know, you can learn lots. It's good to learn on a cheaper rig and make your mistakes on a cheaper rig. So I hope this video has been useful for you. I hope it's also been useful for Lee if he wishes to do stuff to it. Keep trying to encourage him to get his hands dirty and do some upgrades and get him hooked. There is a danger, be warned, as I said earlier, that once you get hooked, this is what started Andrew and I off. Sometimes there's no turning back. So be prepared. But thank you for watching, everyone. Hope this has proved useful. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them down, and I'll happily try and answer them, about speed controllers and radio gear and that kind of thing, and batteries. I will always try and answer them. And stay safe. Please like and subscribe, and catch you soon. Bye for now.